What's going on today, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. Today, I wanted to talk about and answer the question of, is trucking the best career field? Now, personally, I think it's the best career field for me, and I wanted to make this video, make a short pros and cons list of what I've experienced over the last 4.5 years, just for those of you who are either thinking about getting into trucking or have just started out in trucking and are not sure if you want to stick it out in trucking. Before we get into that, I have done a ton of different other jobs within different industries. I've done public service. I've done desk jobs as an administrator. I've done service work. I've done retail work. I was a helicopter mechanic in the Army as a reservist for 6 years. And so I've done a lot of different things. So for me to say that trucking is the best industry means a lot, at least to me. But again, what I'm about to say is just my opinion about my experiences that I've had. So getting right into it, as far as the first pro, there's not a cap on how much you can make, at least realistically compared to other career fields. So what do I mean by that? Within trucking, within your first year, you should be able to make about 50 to 60 grand just running the road, depending upon the company. Now, I know people are gonna say, that's pretty high for your first year, but the average truck driver right now I think the last year's numbers were in 2024, the average truck driver made 74,000. That was just the average truck driver. If you're managing your time well, if you're managing your clock well, you can do pretty well, even for your first year, all things considered. And once you get your experience and you want to go into a bunch of different niches, which is kind of the next point, but it kind of blends with this one. Once you get your experience and you're smart enough to go and get all of your endorsements, the sky's the limit on what you can make. Now, realistically, on the high end, even as an owner operator running a cash business, you're probably going to hit a peak of like $200,000 to $300,000. And that's if you get into a really good niche. Even as a company two driver, you can still make well over $100,000 and sometimes even touching $200,000, depending upon the niche, depending upon your level of experience. And it doesn't take long to get there. I made over 100,000 just in my third year of trucking, and that was 121,000 at Pilot. So not many people can say that in other industries, making $120,000 within 3 years within an industry. So now there are trade-offs to that, which I'll get to, but no job is perfect. No career field is perfect. So there are going to be trade-offs for making that kind of money. So again, going into the next pro, which I already kind of touched on, is there are so many different career fields within trucking itself. You can do flatbed, you can do, and all of the niches, there's a variation, generally speaking, of all the niches of either local work, regional work, where you're, out 5 days a week and then you're back home on the weekends. And then there's over the road variations where you're out, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time, and then you come home for 5 days or whatever the company has set as policy. But of local, regional, and over the road work, there's dozens upon dozens of variations of what you could do within trucking. You could do food service, you could do beverage delivery as local examples, or fuel hauling. You can do over the road tank work. You can do crane work, which is never talked about, and those guys make a ton of money and they need a CDL. You can do oil field work. You can do dry van and reefer. There's so many different examples of, especially if you get your endorsements, which please get your endorsements. And if you want more information on that, I did make a video. Just search for how to get your endorsements within my videos, or endorsements within my videos, or there's other videos out there. You don't even have to watch mine. Please go get your endorsements. It's a pretty low hurdle to hop over to make a lot more money. So anyways, once you get those endorsements, not only does your opportunity to make more money go up exponentially, but then it also is a great fallback for if you get laid off or, God forbid, fired out of one sector of trucking. You could then go to another sector of trucking as a fallback. Even linemen, they have to have their CDL. So if you want to be a lineman and you have your CDL, that's a great start. So linemen are making a killing right now because nobody wants to be a lineman. So next pro, I would say, especially as you do travel around, if you are regional or over the road, you get to travel the country and see where you might want to end up living while you're getting paid. You know, not many people get to say that. Most people have to pay good money to be able to just travel around the country to figure out where they want to even live, let alone just experience the country. But the next and last pro I would say is it's a pretty low barrier to entry to get in trucking. You know, as far as like the cost to get into CDL school, it's pretty reasonable most of the time. I have not heard of a school costing more than a couple of grand, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 grand on the really high end, but I've not heard of a school costing more than 10 grand, which is peanuts compared to what most people are paying to go to college right now. But same thing with going to college, you can still apply for grants or student aid to help you fund your time in school. And then as far as the driving aspect itself, it's actually not that hard, I promise. If you can drive a decent sized truck, just a pickup truck, and you don't have a horrible driving record, you know, it's the same thing but slightly bigger, and you just need to be more cautious, and you need to be able to pay attention. It's really not, the driving aspect of this job is not that complicated. There are certain situations that could be complicated, but overall, it's not super complicated. It's not that difficult. If you take your time, you're not in a rush, most people can drive a truck. So moving into the cons, I would say the first biggest con is the sedentary lifestyle that's with a majority of trucking. Now, this doesn't necessarily apply if you're doing something like beverage delivery or food delivery where it is very, very physical. But outside of those examples, in the rest of the industry, you're going to be driving a lot, which means you're going to be sitting a lot. And obviously that's not great for your health, especially if you're not disciplined with getting out and getting exercise, or at least getting your steps in on a daily basis, and you're also not watching your diet. It can lead to serious health consequences, and I think we all know what the average truck driver looks like as far as physical health goes. So don't be that guy, because really there isn't an excuse to look the way that a lot of truck drivers do. It's just a choice. That's really what it is. That being said, there are workarounds around it, and especially if you manage your time well, you can kind of negate a lot of the sedentary lifestyle aspect that is a major con within this industry. But moving to the next one, within trucking, especially if you're not used to working over 40 hours, if you're coming from some corporate or some retail side of things where you don't work overtime, you're going to be working more than 40 hours for a vast majority of your trucking career. Now, I'm not going to say there aren't 40-hour-a-week jobs out there within trucking, because there are. I mean, food delivery for me was right around 40 to 45, maybe even 50 on the high end for hours wise. But again, that comes with its own trade-offs. So, but generally speaking, pretty much in most lanes of trucking, or in most aspects of trucking, you're going to be working more than 40 hours a week. Not that 40 hours a week is going to get you where you need to be for retirement anyways, which is a completely separate video that I'll do, and you're going to be broke doing the 40-hour work week thing. That is the trade-off for being able to make more money than most people in other sectors of the economy. Next trade-off I would say is it can be dangerous within trucking. Obviously the driving aspect can be dangerous. Obviously that's amplified tenfold if you're not paying attention and if you're not being a defensive driver yourself. But there are cases where you could get into an accident, you could be hurt from that, or you could end up hurting other people. I don't know the exact statistics on workplace deaths or anything like that, but I know trucking is kind of high up there, and that's obviously pushed up there by certain niches, like oil field trucking work is especially dangerous compared to most. And there's other examples as well, but that is something to keep in mind. And again, it does depend upon the niche that you go into. I'm not going to say it's the world's safest job, because it certainly isn't. So the last big con, at least in my mind, is for the first year or two, if you don't want to do over the road or regional, but you're not in a market where there are local jobs that are decently paying for starting out, or they're just wanting experience in your area for the local jobs, then yeah, you might have to go over the road or regional for the first year or two just to get your experience. Now I'd look at food service, I'd look at beverage delivery, I would look at local lumber yards, because I did all of those jobs. Well, actually I did food service, and I did local flatbed delivery for a lumber yard when I was brand new, and I had very little or no experience, and that's how I got my experience. So I would look at that. It's not as I said in another video, you do not have to go over the road. If you don't want to, there might be a local job that fits the bill in your area. Again, I'm not going to say that's the case for everyone. You might have to go over the road. It is what it is until you get your experience, and then you can move into something better. That's it for this video. If you guys think I missed anything, feel free to put it in the comment section down below. Or if you disagree with me, also put that in the comment section down below. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. God bless.